Hello, it's McKenna Immortal from Unicult. Welcome to your introduction to wild edible plants. This video is going to be very freeform, very non-edited, because I found out the hard way that I actually cannot put videos from my iPhone onto my computer without iTunes, which I don't want to pay for. So unless anybody has a hack for that, side note, I'm in the market for an actual video camera so I don't have to do this. But without any further ado, let's not ramble on about that. Let me go ahead and show you the edible plants that I have in my yard. During this introduction, we're going to be learning about 5 different edible plants, 4 of which I will show you right now because they just so happen to be growing in my yard. These plants that I'm going to show you are all highly abundant, highly invasive. Most people would consider them to be noxious weeds. You don't have to worry about harvesting these plants or over harvesting these plants, and they're all very, very edible, and some of them have some medicinal properties as well, which we'll learn about a little bit more in depth. But for now, let me just walk you around my yard here. The air conditioner is on, so it's a little loud, but we'll make it through. So I'm going to turn the camera around, and this is one that you probably all already know. So this is Dandelion. The entire dandelion plant is edible, from the leaves to the blooms to the root, the stems. I don't think I would particularly care to eat the stems, but I mean, you can. This is what the leaf looks like. And dandelion, even when it doesn't have the flowers on it, you always know the dandelion leaf because it looks spiky in appearance, but it is totally spineless. It almost looks like a rocket or an arugula leaf. So one thing that a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, more people should do it actually, but one thing that you can do with dandelions is if you collect these little buds before they're open. Collect these little buds before they're open, and then you can actually pickle them, and they're kind of like, if you've ever had capers, they're kind of like little capers. So dandelion, number 1. And we're going to go over here. So this is called common mallow. I have a ton of common mallow. It's highly invasive. It's actually a problem. So I'm trying to cut as much of this back as I can and dig it up, and then I'm eating as much of it as I can along the way as well. There is just ton of it. It's pretty good for you. I'll have to do a little bit more in-depth research about like the specific nutrients and stuff that you can get out of it, but this plant is actually related to okra. So it is mucigelatinous. So it kind of has like that slimy thing going on when you bite into it. You can eat it raw. I would recommend cooking it. And pretty much all of this plant is edible as well. The leaves are going to be the most delicious. The leaves and then the flowers. I'll have a look through here. Aha! I wasn't sure if we had any little flowers yet, but here's what the flowers look like. There's not going to be a ton of flowers on these plants. And then they do open up. They also produce a little fruit after the flower, which isn't really like a tasty fruit. It looks kind of like a little teeny tiny mini cheese wheel. I mean, it just tastes like a small, like green bean or vegetable or something like that. But so the leaves, especially the younger, softer leaves, are going to be your best bet as far as what is tasty. But I do harvest the bigger leaves, the smaller leaves, chop them up, and then this is actually one of the vegetables that I hide in my curry. So you can put a lot of this stuff in something like a curry and get a lot of nutrition and not even really taste it. So I do cook with this stuff a lot just because I have a ton of it. We're gonna walk over here. Look at all this common mallow I have growing next to my air conditioning. That's ridiculous. Okay, all right, it just turned off. Now we're going to walk over here. Let's see, what should I show you next? Let's take a look at the prickly lettuce. So this is prickly lettuce. I've got one right here and then one right here as well. So prickly lettuce, although it does have these spines aren't really going to hurt you. I mean, they're a little bit prickly and probably wouldn't be comfortable to eat it raw, but you can cut these out, of course, or you can actually cook these. Once you cook them up or pulverize them or chop them up really fine, the spines don't really matter, but this is totally edible as well. I do recommend with any wild lettuce, including prickly lettuce, if you're going to eat it, that you wash it and soak it in fruit and vegetable wash, partially just to clean it, but also to kind of release some of the latex that's in there. Now, the latex does have medicinal properties and you can use it medicinally, and eating some of it, if you're just eating this plant fresh, is not going to hurt you whatsoever, but you just don't want to eat like large quantities of it necessarily. I can maybe also probably share a little bit more about how you would make like a latex tincture out of wild lettuce, which is really great for pain and things like that. But these will get huge. They'll grow into like big, tall stalks. I recommend eating this plant when it is smaller like this. The leaves are going to be a little bit more tender and just a little bit easier to work with. But when the plant is bigger is more so when I would recommend using it medicinally, making like a tincture out of it or something. And the last one that I'm going to show you here is, side note, growing on the side of the house. Here's actually a bigger wild lettuce, a little bigger, a little pricklier. It doesn't quite have like the stalk with the flowers yet, but it grows even bigger than this. Over here, this is thistle. It's creeping thistle. Now, thistle is pretty much entirely edible. This is a plant that I've known is edible and have never eaten it because it is so prickly. Different than the wild lettuce, it's just really hard to work with. So I would say this one is more so for like a survival situation if you have nothing to eat. I'm sure you could pulverize it up, you know, blend it up, chop it up really fine. If it's a survival situation, you could probably pulverize it between a couple of rocks and get some nutrients in that way. So based on the research that I've done, the leaves are edible, the bulbs are edible, and some people actually believe that this plant is poisonous simply because of how prickly it is and the way that it looks, but oh, it just poked me, but it's actually not. So there's creeping thistle. I'm probably going to be taking most of these out, and because there's several of them over here, but I might leave one or two and just let it kind of keep going and wait until it blooms so that I could show y'all later what the blooms look like. And those are the 4 edible plants that I am going to be showing you. Before I end the video, I'm going to walk over to the front of my house where my little garden is, and I'm going to show you one more plant, bonus plant. This is one that I have planted, but it's related to wild edible plants. This is one that you might recognize as well. Okay, so this here is Lamiam. It's also known as spotted dead nettle, and it's related to hembit dead nettle and purple dead nettle. This is one that is usually, can usually be found for purchase at like nurseries and things like that. And a lot of people use it for landscaping, and a lot of people don't know that it is actually edible. Does this grow wild? I mean, probably somewhere in the world, but you're more likely to see like hembit dead nettle and purple dead nettle, same family, just as edible. But this is kind of like a culinary delicacy as well, like fancy chefs use this. So those are the plants that I wanted to show you today. Along with this video, I will be posting out a written guide with a little bit more detailed information. But as far as getting a good look at the plants and their like natural urban environment, I wanted to provide this for you also. Thanks so much for watching. Uni bless.